Introduction to Time Series Analysis using Python Pandas. Before we get started, let's discuss what is time series analysis. Time series analysis is study of data which has some association with the time itself. And the best example I can think of is the weather. As every day changes, the weather also changes. And if we can forecast the future weather based on the past condition, that is a perfect situation and that can happen with time series analysis. We can say the future winters are going to be similar to the past winter conditions and the future summers are going to be similar to the past summers. By this, we can make a forecast of the weather condition. And this weather is going to help us not only in deciding the weather for a normal public, but also this is going to help us in determining future financial condition. Because if the weather changes drastically, the price of commodities are going to change. The price of cotton, the price of sugar, everything is going to change. And the sales is going to change. And fishing industry, farming industry, airlines industry, and many other industries are dependent on the weather as well. That being said, let's discuss on time series analysis now. And as we know, the first statement is import pandas as PD, and I'm going to use Jupyter Notebook today, and feel free to use IDE of your choice. And once we import pandas, I like to always include this HTML snippet because that helps me in formatting the data frames. The first statement I'm going to do now is I'm going to read a CSV file, and this file I named it as mit.csv. The reason I have it MIT is I have the weather condition of Cambridge MIT in the year 1932. There are a lot of weather related websites where you can go and download this data. And here I have the weather for the year 1932, which includes the precipitation, the maximum temperature, and the minimum temperature. By this, we are able to see all the data, and the index is the running number here, and the name, date, precipitation, maximum, and minimum temperature. But this is not in the way we need, so we need to make some changes because the date itself is in the form of a string, and I want to parse the date, and for that I am going to use this updated syntax where I say read CSV with parsing the date. And when I do this, what's going to happen is date is going to come as a date and not as a string. The difference in the prior read statement and this read statement is the format of date. You see, this comes in the format of year, month, and date, and it's not just the format, it's internally stored as timestamp. And if you want to see more into that, the best way we can do that is we can see that using this print statement. If you see here, I am saying in the first line, what is the data type of the data frame df0, and it is data type is data frame. Then what is the data type of the column date? That is series. So every column in the data frame is of type series. In that, let's pick one cell, date 0, that is the first cell, and I say what is the data type of that cell. It says it's string for the data type df0, which is the first one df0. This cell, this one is of type string. Then I say for df1, what is the data type of that cell, and here we can see that cell is of type timestamp. Okay, and that we can see here, that is of type timestamp. And here I am printing the whole data frame data type. So we not only see only the date column, we also see the other column, precipitation, maximum minimum temperature, they are of type float, and the date is of type timestamp. Now moving on, what we can do next is I want to set the index. Instead of having a running number 0 to 365 or whatever it is, let's use the date itself as my timestamp, my index. And for that, there are two different ways to do it. One is I can say data frame set index, or I can read it. While reading itself, I can say use index column as date. If I do that, here if you see, I have said read mit.csv, parse the date and set that as my index as well, and instead of head I'm doing tail for a change. So now we are able to see the last 5 rows in the year 1932 for Cambridge. It shows the precipitation, it shows the maximum and minimum temperature, and above all the date is the first column, which is the index. Okay, now let's go ahead and see how it looks. For that, let me first insert few statements here. I will press the key B, and now let's see print data type of um, data frame 2. So this should be 2, and I say print me the data type, and it says the data type is object float float. That's because the date is a index, it doesn't show up here. Then comes the name, and then comes the three numerical parameter of type float. Okay, so now this is perfect. We have the information in the format we need. We have this timestamp itself as the index column. And if you want to confirm the timestamp is the index column, what we can do is we have a syntax where we can say a particular data frame and say index. In that case, it will say the index data type is date time index. It shows the value, and above all, it also says each cell's data type is date time 64. So by this, we are able to confirm the data type of the whole index and the data type of every cell. And there are 366 days, and I think maybe it's a leap year. And it shows that name of the column is date and timestamp, and the timestamp of the whole thing, which is date time index. Okay, what's the advantage of having date itself as an index? There are lots of lot of benefit. The main benefit lies in searching. Okay, like in SQL, if you have an index column, we can make search on it. It's efficient, and we can do lot more stuff with that. Same thing here. So now I can feed a partial year and month, and it will pull the information. So if I say this way, I say 1932 and the month is Feb, then it pulls the data in the Feb and it shows me here. This is nice that we can do a partial quick search by specifying the data frame, and we can pass the partial index by which we are able to pull the information. Now we know the partial data, we can go ahead and do some aggregate function on it. So the data frame, we specify the column, and then we say the aggregate function. There are many functions like maximum, minimum, mean, those kind of function. And let's do the max now. And when I do the max, it says the max of precipitation is 0.45. So if you look into this data, we'll see 0.45 here, and that is the maximum value. Perfect. Now, if you go across multiple months, then what do we do? Then we can specify a range as well. And if we specify a range like this, I can say a start date, I can say a end date, and once I specify the start and end, it can go and pull those information. So let's see what we get here. So here we are able to see there are 4 days from Feb 28 to March 2nd, and it's able to show me all the 4 days of data. Okay, so once we see the data, once again we can do things what we did before, like aggregate function. Okay, this is no magic. This is very similar to what we did just now. We say the row filter here, column name, and then the aggregate function. And if you do this and we execute, it says the minimum value is 35 for the maximum temperature, and you look into these 4 cells for the temperature maximum. Yes, minimum is 35, which is perfect. Now there are times how much ever we look into numbers, it doesn't make us feel comfortable unless we look at a graph. Okay, we plot it. And for that, the best thing to do is inline magic matplotlib. Okay, so I am doing a inline magic matplotlib, and I am selecting data frame 2 maximum temperature, and then I say plot. If I do this, what it's going to do is it's going in pulling every maximum temperature, and the index is on the date, and it's going to pull the y value temperature, and it's going to plot it, and it looks like this. And I do this on my job very frequently, because once I have a data, I look at the data like this. It gives me a feel how it is, how the data is. So if you see in Boston, in the first quarter the temperature is low. In the third quarter, once again, temperature is low. In the second and third quarter, temperature is high. We are in summer. So this makes sense. Perfect, right? So this way we can plot it and make meaning out of it. But this is too much of detail, right? We are seeing this, so 365 days of data and so much information. I think it's a lot. I'm doing a simple analysis. I don't want so much information. So the best we can do is we can resample in the frequency we need. Okay. And for that, there is a method called resample. And I can say resample quarterly, and I give a aggregate function mean. If I don't give a mean, then we are not going to pull a average value, and I don't want to pull information for one day and say that is the temperature across. So I want to do some aggregation and say in an average first quarter is low, second and third quarter is high, again the fourth quarter is low. Then it makes sense, right? So that what we are trying to do here. And here if you notice, temperature in the first quarter average is 41, then it goes up to 67, third quarter even high, then it comes down. Okay, so that is what we saw in the graph, but now we are doing resample and doing some aggregate function. So the main advantage of resampling is we can do some aggregate function, and here we can do some upsample, downsample, and apply some aggregate function. So here I am doing a particular data frame, maximum temperature, resample in monthly, and plot it. If you notice, I didn't do any aggregate function. It's possible to do something like this. Resample supports aggregation, but we can do without aggregation plot as well. And when I do, this looks very nice. I have 12 month of data because this is monthly, and I'm able to plot it, and every month has a different color. By this we can see that January is the first orange, then Feb is green, red. It goes on that way, and we can see how it looks with different color. So there is better visual um, value here. So let's say instead of monthly, I can say different sampling, resampling. I can say quarterly. If I say quarterly, the same thing comes up with four colors, right, for every quarter. And there are few other sample we can look into our documentation and we can change it. I think we have weekly, we have semi-monthly, and there are a lot more parameters, a lot more values, but these are the ones which we use very common value: monthly, weekly, semi monthly, and those ones. Okay. Oh, I have it here: weekly, semi monthly, monthly, and quarterly. Okay, so that way we can pull those information and graph it. Let's say I don't want um, to do something in the form of a normal line chart, but I want a bar chart. If I want a bar chart, there are a few different ways I can do it. We don't need this matplotlib inline. If I remember, we did that here already. So let's remove this line. I'm going to do a plot here, and I'm going to pull maximum temperature, resample it semi-monthly, then take a average value on that and then plot it with a bar chart. So if I do something like this, let's see how the graph or the plot looks. So here we have a bar chart, and the bar chart shows that it starts cold, then it becomes hot, then once again it comes back cold in the Boston. This was the pattern back in 1932 as well. Okay, so we can see that here, that we can do aggregate function on resample and then plot it with a plot, and where we should say of kind bar. Okay, and if you don't say that, by default it will be a line chart. Okay, and if you say the kind is bar, then it will do a bar chart. Okay, so we got the bar chart now. Now let's learn the next topic. There are times that we want to select a different date because we want to forecast in the future. My manager calls me and says, "Hey, can you predict the future temperature in the year 2024?" Then I say, "Yes, I can." He said, "How would you do?" I would take the historical value and add some variation to that, and I will predict. Okay, so here for that, what I need to do first is select the date. The date I can predict exactly. Okay, there is no need to make a guess. Then I say Panda date range. Start date is January 1st of 24, and the end date is the last day of the year, December 31st of 24, and frequency is daily because we want to predict the temperature on every day. But there are other frequencies also. We have business days, in which case it will skip on Saturday and Sunday, those kind of stuff. Okay, but since it's weather, we are going to use daily. And when we execute this statement, it throws out all the dates in this date range starting from January 1st till December 31st. And if you notice, there are 366 days. I intentionally chose the year 2024 so that that matches with the prior one, has 366 days, frequency is daily, and it's once again timestamp is date time, and here we have the data type of the series is date time index. Okay, so this is the index and of type date time index. So now we have created a date range, and what we can do is we can go and apply this date range to a data frame we have, or we can create a new data frame. So in this case, I'm going to use a existing data frame, and that is this one. If you notice, I am saying data frame 0. That was the first data frame we created all the way in the beginning here. That data frame, I am saying set index, and the index is data range 1, which just now I created, and I say in place equal to true. That means don't create one more new data frame. Instead, in the existing data frame, set the index to this particular date range. And if you notice, I have two dates here. This one is what we are going to predict for 2024. This is the old date, 1932. Location is Cambridge, MIT. We have the historical precipitation, temperature maximum and minimum. Fine so far. So let's move on, and once we have this far, all the dates are matching. We don't want this existing date. I had it because I wanted to confirm that I'm not messing it up. And so far it looks good because January 5th lines up with January 5th in year 24 and in the year 32. All right. And 1932 and 2024. So let's go ahead and drop the columns which we don't want. Okay, so let me insert few more lines here. Okay, so now I say new data frame 3, which is from data frame 0, and I want to pick only columns name, precipitation, maximum and minimum temperature. I am intentionally skipping the date, and then I am displaying the bottom 5 records. It shows the index, and it shows these 5 columns which are of our interest. Actually, I could have even dropped the name because it's pretty much repeating. Okay, no harm leaving it. Maybe down the line it may be required. Okay, so now we have the columns which we need, and then in a new data frame 3. Okay, so there is one more new function method I like to discuss, and this one is as frequency. Okay, there is a as frequency. So what this one is going to do is we have this data frame 3, and I'm going to set the frequency as business days because I'm going to do some analysis for financial data, and the stock markets are open only on the weekdays. So I choose business days, and I say head 12, and I say head 7. Let's see what happens. Okay, so it's not displaying this one. Let's remove this. Okay, so when I do this, I am assigning whatever is in B3 in the data frame 3 to data frame 4, but selecting only business days and displaying 7 days. The reason is I want to see the holiday in between, which is after 5th there is a gap of 2 days, 6th and 7th, and again 8th and 9th we have the data. So this is perfect that we are able to see business days in the year 1924, and the first weekend is 6th and 7th. Okay, and that we can use as as frequency. So how is as what is the speciality about as frequency? As frequency is fundamentally a data selection process. So you cannot do any aggregation, you cannot do any change to data interpolation, those kind of stuff. Okay, so as frequency is just a selection of data, and what we learned before resample, there you can do aggregate functions as well. Okay, so that's how, but these two are very similar in some nature or in most of the nature, but the main difference is this is a selection process and that is a aggregation. Okay, so now, that being said, so now we are able to get the information, we are able to see the holiday gaps and all those kind of stuff. Next one is the interesting one. Okay, so here if you notice, what I am doing is, maybe I'll display the data first and then we'll talk over it. I am creating a new column called add maximum second, minimum second. That is, I am making a prediction. Okay, what is the temperature max and min going to be? But I cannot just copy the same data over. So what I need to do is make some changes because I know the temperature can be up or down. It can go down 4 degrees, it can go up 8 degrees. Why did I go up more? Maybe because of global warming. So I step up by 8 or I step down by 4, and here is the syntax for it. I say numpy random variable of type integer randint. Okay, this is a class and in that I call the method. I pass the parameter minimum starting and what is the max plus 1 and how many you want to create. I want to create as many number of records the frame 4 has. So instead of counting it, saving it into a variable and then bringing it back, good thing about Python is I just put that straight away there and it would do everything on the fly. So our code looks neat and it's more efficient. So now this is going to create random numbers and I save that in a column called add. So those numbers are 8, 3, 6. I have a negative number 2 because I said we can go negative and positive. Then what I say is my maximum temperature is going to be prior maximum. This is historical maximum plus this add, right? Then I repeat the same thing. Minimum is the future minimum is historical minimum plus this random. I have put the same stuff. I have written it out once again. Now when I do this, and if you notice, I have the maximum 39 plus 8 gives 47. Perfect. 41 plus 3 44. Perfect. So each time I add this random number to get the second maximum. Let's look at this minimum 30 plus 8, it should be 38. 28 plus 3, oh, this is perfect. Let's see this. Um, 29 plus 6 is not 31, right? So this is something fishy. Then if you notice here, there is a small difference in syntax. Here I said add data frame. Here I am doing random randint. I'm calling the method. So if you call the same method 2 times, it's not necessary or it would never generate the same random number again. That's the reason when you execute the same method 2 times, first time I executed here, I saved it, then it uses the same information. But if I execute the method second time, it's going to create new numbers again. Watch out. Okay. So never do random number multiple time and compare the results. No way they are going to be the same. Okay. So by this we were able to forecast, or we are able to predict or get a reasonable approximate prediction. Okay, so we are not doing any real um, uh, weather forecasting, but we are doing a statistical approximation and saying this is what the weather is going to look like. Okay, that being said, now we were able to make a approximation by including a randomness, and we were able to add that and all that fun stuff. Now let's move further and see if we can create a data range. Okay, instead of specifying the start date and the end date, can we specify number of periods? Because sometime that happens. I know the start date, I don't know the end date, but I know how many days I have to do this, and I say it's daily. That means it will include Saturday, Sunday as a day as well. Okay, and once again we can do this random stuff, and I add that. So add that with this index, and I show this. Let me run this and we'll discuss over it. So if you notice, when I execute the first two lines, it's creating a data range date time index from January 1st, 10 days, it goes till January 10th, and it shows the data type and the frequency. Okay, then I am creating a series. This is a series, not a data frame. I am creating a series, and I am attaching the one I created date range as index. Okay, so when I do that, it creates a new series, and it has the date and this random number associated with that. Okay, so this is how a date frame is little different from series. Okay, next comes a very interesting topic. This is holidays. Okay, I have worked in many financial application. There what happens is, when you do trading application, there are holidays in between, and you cannot trade on those days. So let's say you do a trade on Thursday, it will not settle on weekend. So you have to watch out the settlement when it will happen. And similarly, if you do a trade, which day the trades can be done. So you have to specify the holiday calendar to the system so that system knows which days are holiday. So you say, I want weekend, no, I don't want weekend. And you would also specify, I don't want New Year to be a day to be traded. I don't want Thanksgiving to be a day to be traded, those kind of information. So far it was easy. The challenge comes when you do trade cross country. Let's say there is a trade between Japan and US. So money gets transferred from Japan to US. We have to make sure that both Japanese bank and the US bank is working and the market is open. When you do international trade in FX especially, we have to consider foreign country holiday schedule as well. Then we create a class called holiday and save all this holiday logic in that. After we save all those logic, then we do this calculation based off that. Okay, let's get started instead of just discussing over it. So how do we create holidays? Okay, for creating holidays, the best thing is, or the pandas do support time series holidays, and here are the two main classes to include: US federal holiday calendar and custom business day. US federal holiday is a class which has US holidays predefined in it. Okay, and custom business day is a class that can be used whenever we want to create our own custom holidays. Okay, and this US holiday, um, class can be instantiated by saying holiday US, and I say custom business day, and I pass the US itself as a input parameter. So if I do this, now I have a US holiday as an instance which is available. So now let's say I want to see what the dates are in between or inside that. There is no way I can print it straight. So what I do is I call this date range function. I say my starting date is November 24th and my ending date is December 1st. I did this dates keeping in mind of Thanksgiving. Okay, so let's execute this. So if you see 24, 25, 26 is a holiday for Thanksgiving, 27 is Friday, then we have 28, 29, which is Saturday and Sunday, then the following 30th and the next month comes here. So by this, we are able to select a date and the frequency we are able to customize for our situation. And since we are dealing with a US calendar, so we specify the holiday calendar as US. So it takes weekend into consideration, it takes US holidays into consideration, and it gives us the dates. And now if you are doing any financial application or anything, we can use it accordingly. Now there are times we want to create custom holidays. Let's say one day was changed, one day was added recently, or we are doing a business with a country where we don't have holiday defined already in Python. And the example I'm going to take today is for India. And if you see here, so we want to create the holiday for India and then use that into our application. So if you see here, I am importing these classes, okay? Abstract holiday calendar, nearest workday and holiday itself, okay? And here I am defining a class holiday India, and I am defining the holidays in India. I have included only 3 days just to explain the concept, but actually there are a lot more holidays. Indian Republic Day, which is January 26th, Indian Independence Day, which is August 15th, and then Gandhi Jayanti, which is October 2nd. Right? So these are the 3 days as holidays for our application, and I define those. I define a class. After that, I go ahead and I instantiate a instance and I name that as holiday IN. So going forward, this is our reference point. We can forget all this information. This is only one time detail needed. We can actually have it in some library, some module. We don't actually need to go in that detail every time, but this one is important for us. Let's go ahead and execute this. It got executed. Perfect. Now let's go ahead and see the date inside this. So here I am saying date range between September 30 and October 6th. So we have October 2nd Gandhi Jayanti in between, and we want to display this. So we start with September 30, October 1, then 2nd is not there, 3rd and 4th is also not there because it's weekend. 5th and 6th are back in. Right? So this is a very good example where we are having a custom holidays for India in this case, where we define 3 additional days in addition to weekends. Okay. Now let's take a step further and consider a situation where I am working for a business where I do part-time job. Sometime I work in weekdays, sometime I work in weekends, and sometime I work on holidays. So let's say I work for Walmart. I work in the register, so they are open all 7 days. They pretty much they work 365 days. In those scenarios, and I am working part time there, in those scenarios, what we want to do is we want to have a date range and we want to specify our own rules there. Okay, so what I am going to do now is I say my week mask is Tuesday, Friday. That means I go for work part time only on 2 days in a week, which is Tuesday and Friday. Okay, so those 2 days, and then I say my holidays are only 2 days in a year because this firm pretty much works every day but for January 1st and December 25th. So, which is New Year and Christmas. This is something like a international holiday, New Year, which is observed in every country. New Year, right? And Christmas is followed in many country. And that being said, so those are the two additional holidays in addition to these two. Okay, so this is a custom business day for those 2 days. I can even include Saturday here and two additional holidays. And then I want to say the date range between December 20 to December 31st. I included in such a way that December 25 is in between this. So if you notice here, I have 22nd and then 29. Okay, so by this we are able to skip all other days other than Tuesdays and Fridays and 25th also. Okay, so since he is working part time only 2 days and this day is almost 10 days or 11 days, and because of these two conditions he has to go to work only on 2 days. Okay, so I think pretty much with this we have discussed time series analysis a good amount of detail. That's it for today, and I thank you for watching this video. And if you have any question, please feel free to leave them in the comment box below. And if you like this video, then give it a a thumbs up, and don't forget to subscribe if you already haven't. Also, don't forget to click the bell button for channel updates. Thank you.